His family has raised Bobby the same way they have raised all of the other dogs, which they make homemade meals. 75% of their food they grow themselves from the garden. They raise rabbits and chickens. And then all those leftovers Bobby would eat. So he's never consumed any ultra processed food. And I think that was the beginning of a big argument between the big pet food and a human being that has never fed dog food to his dog. And so I think that the drama will continue throughout this year.
So tell me about the life strategy that you introduce in the book. Lifestyle, ideal microbiome, food, and environment. It sounds like what you've just said is really the foundation framework of this book. And what makes it so effective? Why should we focus on those things?
Well, in our first book, Dr. Gundry, we focused on the DOGS strategy, which was diet, optimal movement, genetic predispositions, and stress. And that was our 400-page, really heavy science, the why behind intentionally creating extra long-lived dogs. People's number one question was, hey, this is great science. We're so thankful we have it. However, how do we put these principles into action? So this follow-up book, Forever Dog Life, really is the how to do that. And we developed the LIFE strategy. And Rodney, you want to give a brief rundown on that?
Yeah. So, obviously, L right off the bat starts with lifestyle and the environment. We know today how important the environment is, Dr. Gundry, especially with the fact, we're seeing, according to human research, more people under 50 with cancer. Microbiome is shifting, the environment is shifting. So that was really something important that we thought we would cover early on in the first letter of the book. I, which stands for ideal microbiome, and the importance of the microbiome today, something that not a lot of dog pet parents even think about. F stands for food diversity. Obviously, the more diverse your microbiome, the longer you live, according to experts. And then E would come in with environmental stresses, chemical stresses, things that can stress your pet within your home, things that we really need to consider, putting that strategy together and trying to get 100 recipes to coexist with the book.
Listening to Bobby's lifestyle, you've mentioned it, I think, twice now. Much of his life seems to have been spent outdoors, which may not be realistic for most pet parents. But how do you maximize that as a dog owner?
Yeah, it's such an important question. And most of us don't live on farms where our dogs just live their best free will choice life. And there's also, of course, risks with dogs that are outside. Now, Bobby was on kind of a contained 5-acre area, so he was safe, but he was able to touch the ground, breathe clean air, get direct sunlight. His body was in contact with clean, unadulterated soil. So he kind of had this perfect luxury life that none of us really can provide for our dogs. But what we can do is try and optimize the amount of times our dogs do spend outside. And if we live in the city, and if we're dogs primarily contacting concrete, we can take weekend trips to forests. We can get out into the woods. We can take our dogs hiking. We can do what we can to enrich their environment with more natural settings as often as possible.
Yeah, and what's really cool about it is that's not even duration either, Dr. Gundry. A lot of people will look at their watches. Everyone has a busy life, and they think they've got to walk 10 kilometers with their dog. We went to Barnard University where we were sat with Dr. Alexandra Horowitz, that was showing us that just taking your dog outside to sniff was as impactful as walking your dog around the neighborhood for 20 minutes. A sniffari, if you may, giving your dog choice to go outside, collect data, smell fire hydrants, smell telephone poles. They don't got to go very far. Believe it or not, according to scientists, that will increase the health span of your dog alone, just giving them the ability to sniff.
There's a recent human study that we think of us humans, compared to dogs, our smelling system is pretty lousy, but it's still one of the most direct connections to the brain. And there's a recent human study of looking at people who, during the time they were asleep, every 2 hours were exposed to a different aroma from an aroma machine. And compared to people who were not exposed to these different aromas while they slept. And the folks who were exposed to these aromas, literally while they were asleep, had a 20% improvement in memory in 6 months' time. It's like, whoa. I'll tell you a personal story. As you guys know, usually we, for better or worse, have 4 dogs. And recently we almost simultaneously acquired 2 rescue dogs. We usually have 1 rescue dog, but we acquired 2 of them, and they were both boys. And my wife prefers females for dogs. They're a little bit easier. So now we have 2 male boys, and we have a 3rd male. We actually only have 1 female. Anyhow, boys, as you know, like to sniff and mark, and females in general don't, although our longest-lived female was a good sniffer and marker. Anyhow, my wife, I had to train her that they have to sniff, and, you don't pull them, and so, yeah, she goes on sniff safaris now, and I've had to train my wife more than I had to train the dogs. Did I do right by the dogs, and maybe I did right by my wife?
You're doing really well. What I say as a wellness veterinarian is that there are cardio walks, just like for us. There are times when you got to get out there, and even if you see your neighbor, you say, hey, I'm doing my 20 minutes of cardio. Hey, we'll talk later. You want to keep your heart rate elevated above resting heart rate for a minimum of 20 minutes. And we do that for dogs as well. However, the warm up and the cool down can be this extensive sniffari where we give our dogs choice. And if they want to turn left and smell the bush for 90 seconds, we will just give them the opportunity to smell that bush for 90 seconds. Because in essence, this is their happy hour. This is when they're able to ground themselves out. They're able to collect information from the environment. They're able to determine where other animals have been and the health status of other animals. So giving them the opportunity to really be dogs is a very important part of decreasing their stress, actually. Yeah. So you did well.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
You did really good.
I try to convince everybody that, this is their Instagram or their Facebook, and,
Yep.
they're finding out who's in the neighborhood, probably what, Fred had for breakfast this morning. And yeah. So
I call it P-mail.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Yeah. I like that.
And something else you touched on is that 4 dogs, right? So that's considered a very rich social life. When you looked at, the centenarians in Sardinia, one of the key factors longevity scientists said was a very rich social life. And so science will show if you can't get out and you're busy, try having a play date with your dog. Maybe knock on your neighbor's door, be a little cordial, bring over that dog, right? Friends go a long way in the dog world.
Before we leave this topic,